One author puts it this way. He says, you want to know where this kind of risk avoidance leads you? It leads to sinful patterns of behavior that never get confronted and changed. Abilities and gifts that never get cultivated and developed. Until weeks become months and months turn into years. And one day, you're looking back on a life of deep, intimate, gut-wrenchingly honest conversations you never had. Great, bold prayers you never prayed. Sacrificial gifts that you never offered. And lives you never touched. And you're sitting in a recliner with a shriveled soul and forgotten dreams, and you realize there was a world of desperate need and a great God calling you to be a part of something bigger than yourself. You see the person you could have become but did not. You never followed your calling. You never got out of the boat. And that's from John Ortberg's If You Want to Walk on Water, Get Out of the Boat. And what is he saying there? He's saying this is going to catch up with you. It's going to catch up with you at some point, and you're going to look back and see how what you thought was just one little decision here and there became the definitive theme of your life. Barak saw God do a wondrous thing in this battle, as we'll see. Totally provided for the people. Totally came through. And you got to wonder, it's cool, God still used him, he was still there, but for the rest of his life, did he wonder, what if I had said yes to God? What if I had said, okay, I'll do it, I'll give it a try? Well, we see that God was faithful, even if Barak was afraid and passed up on this opportunity. At Kadesh, Barak called together the tribes of Zebulun and Naphtali, and 10,000 warriors went up with him. Deborah also went up with him. They're like, what's she doing here? He's like, never mind. And now Heber the Kenite, a descendant of Moses' brother-in-law, Joab, had moved away from the other members of his tribe and pitched his tent by the oak of Zananim near Kadesh. And so this is kind of an important detail, as we'll see later in the story. But basically, this is some distant relative of Moses and his tribe that are camped out near where this whole battle is about to go down. And as it turns out, they're at peace with these Canaanites. When Sisera was told that Barak, son of Abinoam, had gone up to Mount Tabor, he called for all 900 of his iron chariots, getting out the big guns, and all his warriors, and they marched from Harosheth Hagoyim to the Kishon River. Then Deborah said to Barak, "Go! This is the day the Lord has given Sisera into your hands. Has not the Lord already gone ahead of you?" So Barak went down Mount Tabor, followed by 10,000 men. So she's like, "It's time! Go!" At Barak's advance, the Lord routed Sisera and all his chariots and army by the sword, and Sisera abandoned his chariot and fled on foot. So they get smashed, and we'll see what exactly happened here in a second. And so Sisera goes running. But Barak pursued the chariots and army as far as Harosheth Hagoyim, and all the troops of Sisera fell by the sword. Not a man was left. And it's interesting because Judges 4 kind of gives this narrative account of what happened. But in the next chapter, after they have this victory, Barak and Deborah get together and they're so excited. They've seen God provide in this crazy way that they do what anyone would ever do in that situation. They write a song about it. And I mean, that was what people did. They're celebrating. They're so excited by what God has done here. And so they have this poetic song that's recorded in chapter 5 that kind of retells what happened in chapter 4. And in the poetic retelling of this event, we read in Judges 5:28 through 22 that the stars fought from heaven. The stars in their orbits fought against Sisera. The Kishon River swept them away. That ancient torrent, the Kishon. March on with courage, my soul. Then the horse's hooves hammered the ground, the galloping of Sisera's mighty steeds. And so this is kind of something important to understand. So God had said, "Hey, Barak, I want you to take your troops up to Mount Tabor, and I'm going to lure Sisera and his crew into this river valley." But it was the dry season, so this is just like the plain. so they're coming together in battle, and Barak and his crew is coming down the mountain. Sisera and his crew is rushing through this dry river valley. And in the midst of the dry season, God sends a flash flood. And this river just kind of, comes down and just sweeps them all away. And so then, those of them that are left, in their really fancy schmancy chariots, are in the mud. And the image there is that the horses are having trouble, like getting the chariots to go anywhere, and they're stuck, and Barak is able to take them out. And so God performs really a miracle before their very eyes to rescue the people. Sisera, however, fled on foot to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber, the Kenite, because there were friendly relations between Jabin, king of Hazor, and the clan of Heber the Kenite. And so he's like, hey, there's these people camped out here, and we're friends with them. I'll go hide out in this tent. And Jael went out to meet Sisera and said to him, come, my lord, come right in, don't be afraid. So he entered her tent, and she put a covering over him. I'm thirsty, he said. Please give me some water. She opened a skin of milk and gave him a drink and covered him up. Milk from a skin. Sounds really good. Anyway, he was fine with it, I guess. And he said, stand in the doorway of the tent, he told her. If someone comes by and asks you, is anyone here? Say no. And so he's thinking, I'm safe. I'm in this tent. There's just this woman here. Nothing's going to happen to me. I'm going to go to sleep. But Jael, Heber's wife, picked up a tent peg and a hammer and went quietly to him while he lay fast asleep, exhausted. Now, these were a nomadic people, and it was often the women's job to set up the tents. So Jael here was probably pretty handy with a tent peg and a hammer. And she's walking over, and she's thinking, all right, better make this first one count. And she drove the peg through his temple into the ground, and he died. And so in one swing, that tent peg goes all the way through into the ground. We got to give her some credit for this, okay? I've always been, it's like you're reading this story and all of a sudden you're like, okay, and then you're like, what? And you got to read it a couple times to really let it sink in. So, I try to imagine doing this, and she was a brave lady. If he had felt anything, physically, this man was surely stronger than she was. His military experience would have dwarfed any knowledge of combat she had. But she didn't know how to use a hammer and a tent peg. And really, here, she does what Barak was afraid to do. And so she becomes the deliverer of Israel.